nonfiction branders. I hope the audio is going out on this correctly, but if not, consider this a test run of a new system. And I'm going to be talking with Don Stanley as we do a live podcast record. So bear with me if there are any problems today. I'm going to iron them out during the week instead of doing it this past week when I should have. But that's the way things go when you're broadcasting live. So without further ado, here is the lovely and talented Don Stanley, who, yep, and I just want to set it up by saying that Don is an instructor in the Life Sciences Communication Department at the University of Wisconsin here in Madison, Wisconsin. And he's a good friend, but also a really early adopter of social media as a means of quality communication, connection, and engagement for anybody, not only if you want to sell stuff or serve people, but if you just plain want to connect with people. So he's a great person to have asking me questions about the thing I want to talk about most, which is my brand new book. And Don has seen an advanced PDF galley proof of the book. I don't think you've seen anything of the newer Finally Blessed. So I hope your first question is not about all the mistakes and typos that you found in the PDF document. Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, and that, to be honest, that's one of the biggest things that self-publishing authors are concerned about. It's all the mistakes or the typos, all the things that you thought as soon as you were done, you thought you were totally ironed out of all that stuff. But then every time you open the book, you find another typo or mistake. And I've already uploaded a couple of different versions of the PDF. As I see one thing that needs changing, I upload it, I correct it, and upload it. So anyway, we're here today. This is going to be a little bit different nonfiction brand podcast because, of course, I think I'm going to make January into February as my promote the book podcast episode after episode because, of course, I'm doing this on a shoestring. I'm doing this with no shoes, to be honest. And one of the things that Don and I have talked about on this podcast a lot is the incredible power of social media to give you multiplying effects for whatever efforts you can muster. Well, the bottom line is I can't muster a big check for Google ads or Facebook ads or anything like that. Instead, I'm going to have to do this 100% organically. And that's why I brought on the 100% organic Don Stanley. So Don, how are you doing? Yeah, thank you very much. And I love everything you just said, but I'd like you to say it again because I started recording halfway through it. So, Don, can you back that track up just a little bit and say the same stuff? Well, thank you, Don. The funny thing is, my wife and I, kind of a Sunday morning thing we always do is watch CBS Sunday Morning. It started because my mom. It started because my wife is just, I don't know. She just loves the kind of mix of happy stories, a little bit of news, but on a lighter tone. And they had this interesting story with Norman Lear, the great Hollywood producer. You know, he's probably best known as the producer and creator of All in the Family back in the day, the TV sitcom that really broke the mold on what sitcoms could talk about. And in it, he had this quote that he learned very, very early on that informs his entire life. And he said it, and I just went, that's exactly right. The quote, paraphrased because I haven't had a chance to look it up, is something along the lines of, every person is my superior. I can always learn something from everyone, or something like that. And I love that idea, and it's frankly one of the things that I brought into the book, was that every person is my superior in what they do or how they do it, or they have something to teach me. And you mentioned the fact that, yes, I've got some well known thought leaders that I talk about in the book, but the ones that I'm most proud of are the lesser known thought leaders who don't even consider themselves to be thought leaders. You know, they haven't dared take that title onto themselves. And yet, just by learning who they are, what they do, and how they do it, I've recognized, and by the way, you don't get to call yourself a thought leader. Other people get to call you a thought leader. Well, I'm calling these people thought leaders because they led me toward a thought or a process or a system that really allowed me to level up my game. And again, they don't have to be world known or worldwide known. They just have to be someone that I can look to, that I can then share their story. And by the time I've shared their story, you're going to think of them as a thought leader, which it sounds like you already did. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's true. That's part of it. And frankly, one of the reasons I reached out to friends of mine or acquaintances that I've been able to meet from Australia and New Zealand and other nations around the world is because we Americans love our bubbles. We love to talk back and forth the same conventional wisdom over and over again. And I find that tedious, boring, and duplicative or redundant. And the last thing I wanted to do is just churn out another book about conventional wisdom regarding branding and social media and personal branding, etc. So instead, what I did was, number one, I have this tremendous resource available to me. Which is called the Nonfiction Brand Podcast. And many, but not all the people I talk about in this book have been on the podcast. And guess what? They've said some incredible stuff and taught me incredible things on the podcast. And I can take that transcription of what they said in their words, in their voice, in their style, with their personality, and I can fold that into the book. So that's one of the things I wanted to do from the very beginning. I wanted to leverage all the wisdom that's been spouted in this podcast and put it in a different form for people who may not be podcast listeners or may have never heard of the Nonfiction Brand Podcast. And by the way, this is smart marketing. If you want to leverage your podcast to sell your book, which then leverages the book to sell your podcast, that's good, circular marketing, if you will. It's a smart technique. It's a little bit mercenary, perhaps, but I don't think ultimately it is, because what it is saying, I'm telling you in the book, this person has really valuable stuff to say and share. Follow them online, follow them on social, connect with them on LinkedIn, but also check out their episodes. And by the way, all those episodes are actually cited in the book. So you don't have to waste your time going through 125 episodes to find them. You can go to episode 56 and hear from whoever. And one of the things I did was I purposely sought out, well, put it this way. One of the big things about doing social media is you prove and demonstrate who you are, what you do, and how you do it every single post you do. Every person that I have curated their stories to be in this book are an indication of my ability to curate. Whether I have a good ear, a good eye, a good brain, and I can pull out interesting stuff from these people. And just because they're in this book does not mean that I endorse 100% of what they're doing professionally. But I'm pointing to one thing that they're doing with excellence that just impresses the bejesus out of me. Let me give you an example of that. Jay Baer, who is kind of a top tier thought leader in the social media, marketing, leadership, entrepreneurial space. He's a fantastic follow and a great writer, and I would recommend him all day long. The only thing I wrote about him was not anything I just said. I'm talking about how he packages himself visually to make it easy for people to understand who he is, what he does, and how he does it in a way that you can tell from across a conference room at Social Media Marketing World with, 500 people in the room. Literally. Oh, yeah, and it's not just a blazer. It's a full bespoke suit. Oh, my God. And the thing is, he's actually turned that suit. And what I'm describing is the fact that Jay Baer has a signature look. And that signature look I refer to in the book as a penchant for plaid, because the dude cannot get enough plaids. And he's got these suits that are incredibly interesting color palette combinations. And consequently, when you walk down a hallway, like at, as I said, at Social Media Marketing World, which will have 5,000 people there, you walk down the hallway, you're not going to see anybody, but you'll see him, because he's like a Technicolor test pattern walking down the hallway. But he's on that tightrope line between recognizable and packaged and gimmick. And he walks that tightrope so well because, again, there are other people at Social Media Marketing World who are wearing for lack of a better descriptor, clown costumes practically. It's the look at me, look at me, look at me stuff. And he's definitely saying look at me, but it's more like look at me because you know I wear suits like this. As opposed to look at me, I'm a car wreck. Yeah, exactly. And so I write about Jay because he is visually packaging his personal brand in a way that not only makes it easy for people to identify him person to person, but creates what he talks about in his book, Talk Triggers. He creates a talk trigger about him and his speaking services, because one of his main revenue streams for his business, his personal brand business, is speaking to groups ranging from, Fortune 500 companies to associations to whatever. And he found out one interesting thing. People who would book events started talking not about him, not about the quality of his presentations or the topics he speaks about, but the fact that he comes with these incredible colored suits that are so fun, so exciting, and add so much power and energy and excitement to an event that event directors are saying, oh, you got to book Jay because let me tell you about the suits he wears. So they're not talking about his content. They're talking about his visual packaging. And that's why I wanted to write about that in the book, because everyone else would talk about Jay and they talk about his book, Talk Triggers, and they would talk about a lot of the stuff that he shares with people and all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you can get that. But what you need to know about Jay from my curator's point of view is that he is one of the best packaged personal brands that I've ever run across. And we should all go to school on his example. Um, just one technical thing. I'm getting a low rumble. I think it's from your elbows on the table with your microphone. It's translating to the mic. Don't worry about it. I can take it out some, but if you can avoid touching your table, that would be helpful. Yeah. Yeah, just a Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's interesting because when I set out to write the book, I had certain people in mind because they did great podcast episodes. They've got some really good stuff to share. But a lot of the ones I knew I was going to write about, I thought I was going to write about them about one thing, and it ended up being about another. Because as I started thinking about why I find them so fascinating, so interesting, so thought leadery, if that's a word, was not based on necessarily what they were saying, but the way they were doing it. I'm trying to think of a specific example. For example, okay, this is, by the way, people, this is how it works. You'll hear me talk about social media marketing world all the time because that is my number one go-to event that I pay personal coin to attend every single year, because the first year I went, I'm like, this is a pretty costly event, but I'll check it out. And how did I meet people from Australia, New Zealand, and you name it? It's because I went to social media marketing world. So that was huge for me to broaden my horizons, my literal geographic horizons were broadened by the people I could meet there. But this is also how it works. First day of last year, right before COVID shut down everything. I mean, I was nervous about even going out there because COVID was in the news, but things hadn't shut down yet. First day, I go out on this big, beautiful deck overlooking the San Diego Bay and, all that stuff. And there are a ton of people attending the event that are just hanging around talking because things haven't really gotten started yet. And I saw a circular table with 3 people at it. I didn't know 2 of the people at that table, but I did know one. And one of the things I've learned is, in spite of the fact that normally I would wait for someone to say, hey, come on over here, is at this event, you have to come on in, wait for a pause, and introduce yourself and engage because, if you're spending those dollars, you better get value out of them. So I sit down, I say hi, when I didn't interrupt the conversation, but waited. And I met 2 people I didn't know. One of whom was a realtor, a real estate professional from Vancouver, British Columbia. Okay? I don't know that many Canadians. They aren't all that different from Americans, but they are different from Americans. So I was really interested to tap her brain and ask her why, as a realtor, are you coming to an event that traditionally would be attended by marketing directors, social media coordinators and managers, basically marketing professionals, maybe some academics, in the field. Why is a realtor showing up here? And I'll be honest, part of what I wanted was I use realtors in my presentations a lot as an example of people who aren't doing social when they should be. Well, it turns out her name's Leah Bach, and she's great. I love her. I've had her on the podcast. I can't tell you which episode. You'll have to look through the whole thing to figure out which episodes those were. But I knew I wanted to talk to her. And here's the thing. She was sick as a dog. She literally thought she had COVID. She didn't. But we talked for all of 10 minutes. We exchanged cards. I could tell that she was an interesting person, not a snake oil salesman or someone who's just fronting. I look for the people who are people first rather than business cards. She was definitely a person first person. So I knew I wanted to talk to her. And so I got her on the podcast and we started talking. And my initial thought was, we'll talk about everything about, so what techniques are you using as a realtor and how does that work for you? Our conversation had a little bit of that, but mostly it was about things like the fact that she took an mostly it was about things like she took a stand-up comedy class as she was getting divorced because, she wanted to feel good about herself. She wanted to, break the mold. She was like, forget about everything. And I discovered things about her and what she was doing that made me go, oh, wow. Things like in the book, you'll be able to take a look and see the daily driver vehicle that she drives all around Vancouver. It's a slate gray smart car. Those cars that look like clown cars? It's a slate gray smart car with her logo on the side in a slightly lighter tone of gray. So here's this car that is literally screaming, "Don't look at me." And her logo is screaming, "Don't look at me," which means, of course, you're going to look at it because it's so odd and unusual and kind of counterintuitive. And I'm like, oh my God, most realtors roll up in a white Lexus with shoes that are absolutely inappropriate for a new home building site and then prance around like some type of Prada catwalk model. And that is not Leah Bach. And we started talking and I said, Leah, I just have to ask you, I mean, you are so non-traditional when it comes to real estate or traditional real estate marketing. Why is that? And she cited, and I love this, and you'll love this too, because you're old enough to remember it. She cited, remember those cotton commercials, cotton, the fabric of your life? And I'm like, yeah, I totally remember those. She says, real estate is a very short, but intense relationship. You know, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of heartache. You know, you list the five most difficult things in your life, and moving or buying a new home and moving into it is one of the most stressful things you'll do in your life. If I can become the thread within the fabric of the lives of these people that makes their home buying, home moving experience easier, that's what I want. I don't want the transaction. I want to become part of their lives, and to the point that people invite me over to birthday parties for their children. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're not one of those real estate hucksters that's all about trying to get the transaction, you know, show two homes, get the transaction, pick up a check for $25,000. Wow. So, and then we talk more about that. So I thought I was going to talk to her about how she uses Instagram, like what her posting schedule is, or, you know, stuff like that. And it ends up being this deep, friendly, philosophical, and personal conversation about the person that is Leah Bach, which is absolutely true to the personal brand that is Leah Bach. And if there's anything that I hope people get out of this book, is that you already are a brand. All you have to do is kind of focus on it a little bit and maybe put a little thought into how you package it. For example, when I say how do you package it, it's like the subjects I talk about publicly are limited compared to my interests. You know, obviously, anybody who's watching the live stream or knows anything about me knows the back wall behind me is covered with guitars. I'll talk about them a little bit, but I'll never play any music for you because, you know, I don't want to hurt your eardrums. But it informs me who I am. Now, I look at Don's wall behind him, and he's got a couple of, is that Japanese characters on the wall? And what looks to be a practice rattan samurai sword, or... So there you go. Don is demonstrating without saying a flippin' word who he is, what he does, and how he does it, because his philosophy, and one of the things I love about meeting Don was that he turned me on to things like the Stoic philosophers. We've talked about this in the past: Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Cicero, etc. And knowing that Don is a philosophical person makes me believe he's a deeper, calmer thinker about everything that he does, and therefore he's valuable to me. And by the way, Don, hate to say it, that's why I included you in the book. Well, if anybody has that feeling, I totally get it. Because before I was a brander, I thought the same thing, which is, oh, this is all marketing designed to get you to buy things you don't need. And to that, at the time, I agreed. Yeah, that's exactly right, man. I love this band. They went, they sold out. You know, this band that I love, they sold out because they got a label, and all of a sudden they've got. No, The band did what bands want to do, which is play for the biggest audience possible. Now, you can make the argument that the band sold out their style if you love them because they're really, really hard, and all of a sudden they're churning out pop tunes. You know, like the band Extreme. Remember Extreme? They were a hard rock band, and their biggest hit was More Than Words, la da 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 da. And every member of the band hated the fact that their biggest song was More Than Words. Another example would be the Go-Go's. Remember them? They hated the fact that their biggest hit was Walk Like an Egyptian. Because it was like, no, the band, the Go-Go's, considered themselves punk. They considered themselves to be a punk band. And their biggest hit was a one-hit wonder, bubblegum pop song that if you play it now at any wedding, the entire dance floor is going to fill up because everybody loves it so much. Now, so the question really is about branding, and those two examples, Extreme had an idea of exactly who they were, what they did, and how they did it, and they violated it by creating their biggest hit. The Go-Go's had a very clear idea of who they are, what they do, and how they do it, and they violated it because a producer said, I got this song that's going to be a top 40 hit. And all of a sudden they said, we don't want to be a punk. And all of a sudden they said, we don't want to be a punk band anymore. We want to be a top 40 hit band. Well, they violated the prime directive of branding, which is always be consistently hewing to who you are, what you do, and how you do it. The other thing about branding, and one of the first things I wrote about in the book, is branding, the original branding, comes from the fact that your brown cow looks exactly like my brown cow. Back in the days on the open range of Texas, and I don't know if people understand how cattle were grazed back then and still are in a lot of cases. The open range meant there's this vast territory, and you put your cows out there, your steer, your cattle, and they go wherever they want to go and eat. And then the cowboys have to go out and bring them back in. But here's the thing. Your brown cow looks exactly like my brown cow. How are we going to differentiate two things that are exactly alike? They came up with this thing called branding, which was you take an iron, you put it in the fire, and you put a distinct mark on the hide of that cow so you know it's yours. It was about differentiation. Branding still is about differentiation. And I talk about this example in the book. Picture, if you will, two four-wheel drive vehicle brands. One of them is doing a photo shoot for a magazine spread on the plains of the Serengeti in Tanzania, Africa. The other four-wheel drive vehicle is doing a big glossy photo shoot outside Moab, Utah, right near Arches National Park, where you can see all the sandstone, beautiful topography and all that stuff. Which brand is which? Where would you put Jeep versus Land Rover? Already in your mind, you're saying, well, Jeep is the one near Utah, and Land Rover's always got an elephant or a giraffe behind it. Why? Because Land Rover is African, Jeep is American. And by the way, people who live in the UK, where they can get a Land Rover from someone who probably makes it, are buying Jeeps because their personal brands are more aligned with American culture and brands and stuff like that. They're wearing Levi's jeans. They're drinking Starbucks coffee instead of, tea or whatever. People align themselves to their brands. And for anyone who doesn't believe in branding, I'll say things like, okay, what do you drive? What computer do you use? What's on your wrist right now in terms of a timepiece? Or what jewelry do you wear? If someone came up to you with a bag that is that turquoise green of Tiffany and Company, are you excited, or are you sitting there going, well, you paid too much? Well, yeah, if you're a guy, you're saying you paid too much. Yeah, and sorry, don't mean to be sexist here, but in general, I don't get excited about that bag, but I know plenty of women in my life who would be like, "Oh my God, you spent too much," which it translates to, "I can't believe you love me that much." Yeah. Well, first off, you got to get over that dreaded imposter syndrome thing where everyone knows more than me about what I do every single day. You know, let me give you an example. Or let me think about how I want to answer this. Well, first of all, you got to get over imposter syndrome, that feeling that everybody knows more about what I do every single day than I do, and therefore, what value do I have in sharing anything compared to these people who are always more knowledgeable about me? Imposter syndrome to me is a curse, but also a blessing. Because if it makes you think that the quality of your post isn't good enough, and it causes you to dig deeper and search harder and find better examples or whatever, that's good because that's keeping you truly professional. A professional doesn't go, I did it once, it was effective, therefore I'm going to tell everyone that's the only way to do it. A true professional is going to be, I did that once, it was pretty effective. I'm going to try other things and find out if there's something more effective. And then I'm going to report back on those things, maybe in a blog post or a video or something like that, and let you, the viewer, make the decision on which one is actually right. Because again, I'm not here to say there's only one way to do things. It's, I'm leading you to think. The term thought leader means not single truth identifier. It means I'm getting you to think. And by the way, a good thought leader should say, you may take issue with some of the things I've said, because then we can have a true conversation and I can learn from you. So, imposter syndrome, get over it. But also, the other part I talk about is a thing called expertise laryngitis. And this is what imposter syndrome leads to. If you've been in any job in any specific area of business or human endeavor, you have achieved a level of expertise that is above some people on this earth, but not necessarily as high as some other people on this earth. So you may not be the absolute number one person in your field, but let's say you're the number 50 person in your field. Guess what? Anything you can share has value to the number 51, 52, 53, all the way down all the way down to the person who's just starting a job in that field. An example, you're a graphic designer. You've got 5 years in the saddle doing nothing but website design. You've learned things in your 5 years about typography, especially in digital situations, that most people do not know, even other designers. Because just this past week, I was talking to someone who is a traditionally print designer, and every 3 sentences she says, well, I haven't done a lot of design for video or digital, but my expertise in typography says this. Well, guess what? Get rid of that first part and say the first principles of digital type. So guess what? Get rid of that first part and accept the fact that you can caveat. Now, this may be a little bit different in digital and video environments, but basic typography dictates that you don't have more than 2 font styles on any given device or page. That's still true. And you can learn by, like, let's say you post out something about typography saying no more than 2 fonts on a page, and ideally they, complement each other. If someone takes issue with that and pops into your comments saying, well, in certain cases you should do this, fantastic, because you've now created a conversation and you can carry that conversation with that person. So what happens when that happens? More and more people see your post, because every algorithm is looking for one thing, and that is engagement. If people are engaging with your post, responding to it, and commenting, it's going to share it wider and wider and wider. And the thing about that comment, you may post it on a Monday. If it's still getting engagement on a Friday, it's still out there churning and earning for you. If you don't do that comment based on your hard-earned expertise and experience, you get nothing. 0. That's the only guarantee. If you don't post, you get nothing. If, however, that post gets some attention, all of a sudden you start banking some pennies into your bank of personal brand that starts building your level of awareness in the marketplace. One of the examples, I like to kind of reduce things to the absurd to really make the point. I always think about aluminum anodization. Okay, do you know what aluminum anodization is? Well, exactly. It's the coating of aluminum to preserve its finish, to make it stronger, all that stuff. Well, when in my reductio ad absurdum example, I always say there is someone in the world of aluminum anodization who is recognized as the #1 authority on that. To which I then ask the question, how did they become that? And the answer is, they demonstrated their expertise, their knowledge, their experience, and their ability to curate other smart people to prove to you that they are the resource, the fountainhead of information about aluminum anodization. And notice the fact, if you don't know, that doesn't mean you can't be recognized as knowing, because you bring in smart people who can inform you the entire time. If you are curating people who are better than you, does the audience make the distinction between them being fantastic and you being, not so much? No, you're flying in a flock that's flying at a higher altitude than you may naturally feel you fly at. So that would be #1, or #1 and 2. Recognize imposter syndrome for what it is, but don't let it stop you. And get rid of your experience laryngitis, or your expertise, and get rid of your expertise laryngitis. Even if you're a 20-year-old coming out of college, you can demonstrate stuff like that story you told at one of your presentations that I actually include in the book about one of your students who was absolutely 100% social media agnostic, and is now a participant or a contributor to Scientific American coming out of college. That's a fantastic story. You can read about it in the book. And, Don, we're going to have you back on the podcast to talk about that in detail because it's such a fascinating story. But here's this kid who literally has next to zero expertise, but she had no laryngitis because you encouraged her, you challenged her to go up there and start posting. And she gets a national, potentially international platform recognizing her as a young science communicator to watch. Gee, that's the power of social media. Don, I wish I could say I had this deep, philosophically sounded strategy for this book, but it all comes down to being jealous as a green eyed monster when this year in March, let's see, what was it, March like 2nd through 5th or something like that, in San Diego at Social Media Marketing World, my friend Melanie Diesel was there and she saw me and said, "Hey, I got a copy of the book for you." She walks up to me and gives me a copy of her book, her brand new book, smoking hot off the press, The Content Fuel Framework. And I saw this book and I'm like, "Oh, congratulations. Oh my God." And my next thought was, I am so jealous. Oh my gosh. I had what I have come to refer to as author's envy, which is if you've ever authored a book length anything, it's very painful. I'm a man, so I should never make the comparison to childbirth, but but a lot of authors have said to write a book is like birthing a child. It's pain, the pain, 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 and then it's delivered and you love it. And you forget the pain. And it typically takes 2 years to forget the pain of authorship. And then you start going, "I want another baby." And in the case of Melanie Diesel, she had this brand new baby in the form of a book. And I'm like, "I want another baby." Then I met another person or another area of business I like to use as an example in my talks is plumbing. The idea is something as prosaic as plumbing. Can you be an expert plumber? Can you be known as a plumber? Can you become a superstar as a plumber? And I would always ask those questions and kind of give my take on it in my presentations. Then, and again, this is part of the value of social media marketing world. It's not it's not the presentations I go to. It's the people I meet. I'm sitting at a table before the first day started, and I'm kind of doing my Instagram thing of, "Hey, I'm at Social Media Marketing World," trying to get value out of the fact that I'm spending all this money. And I'm doing this Instagramming. I look up and I see this guy, this big, burly guy from the back, gray hair. He's got a teal blue-green shirt on. And across the back shoulder yoke area, it's all embroidered with Roger Wakefield, the expert plumber. See me on YouTube, all this stuff. He's got like a walking billboard on his back. And I see it, I get it, I'm laughing at it. In my head, I'm going, "Wow, that's really on the line of look at me, look at me, look at me, but let's not judge, let's meet." So I walk up and I say, "Hey, Roger," because his name is on the back of his shirt. I just wanted to let you know that your branding is working because it got my attention from 20 feet away. He laughs. We start talking. And I said, I would love to get you on my podcast because I want to talk about how you use plumbing, or because I want to talk to you about how you use social media for your plumbing business. I think it's fascinating that a tradesman is actually working it, and I want to learn more. He goes, great, let's talk later. First keynote of social media marketing world. Picture 2,500 to 4,000 people in a hall at the convention center in San Diego. Michael Stelzner of Social Media Examiner, which is probably one of the number one go-tos for anyone who works in social media and marketing, he does an opening speech, introducing things and how the week's or how the conference is going to go, and he'll talk about something that has been really happening in social media and stuff like that, just to kind of it's almost like an amuse-bouche for the entire event. And he starts talking about Roger Wakefield. And he tells the story that I tell in the book, which is the true story of Roger Wakefield. Roger and I went to Social Media Marketing World for the first time in 2018. We didn't know each other. I think I saw him because he was wearing colorful shirts and stuff, but I didn't talk to him or anything like that. We go to our individual sessions. I never see him again. He tells me the story how he's in a session with Daryl Eves, who is an expert in YouTube. And he's listening, he wants to learn how he might be able to use stuff for his business. And he hears Daryl say, the number 2 search engine in the world is YouTube. And he goes, what? Are you kidding? But he writes it down in his book. And the whole time he's in this session, his phone is blowing up. And it's his wife. And so he excuses himself, gets out of the room, and he starts talking to his wife. And his wife says, by the time you get home, we're not going to have a business. Because they were really hurt. Their marketing wasn't getting traction. Things weren't working. What are we going to do? We're going to have to shut down. Employees are going to have to be let go. All that stuff. And he's like, oh my gosh. He goes back in, learns what he can learn from Daryl Eves, and he starts thinking about that idea of YouTube being the number 2 search engine. And he says, I should take a look at that. He does a little research, types in things like plumbing on YouTube, and there are a lot of people up there with stuff like how to install a toilet, stuff like that. But there was no personal brand, who was really dominating the space. And so he sat down with his marketing team, which was him, his wife, and his stepson, and said, everything we're doing for marketing, we're getting rid of. We're starting over. We're doing YouTube. Nothing but YouTube. And he is now, and within 6 months of posting videos, I think on a tempo of like 2 to 3 a week, within 6 months, Google contacted him and said, we love what you're doing for on YouTube. Google contacted him and said, we love what you're doing for YouTube, especially from the point of view of tradespeople like plumbers. We would love to have you come to VidCon, the globe's biggest YouTube conference, to join a panel of tradespeople who are using YouTube to get out their messages and stuff like that. Now, most people know anything. For most people, if you know anything about VidCon, it's where all the cool kids, and I mean kids, 20-year-olds go to follow their favorite YouTubers. It's not where a guy who's 57 years old goes to be on a panel talking about how businesses can, especially small businesses, can use YouTube. He was invited and is now participating, and he was one of the first 12 invitations of YouTube Live from LinkedIn, and he was one of the first 12 beta testers of LinkedIn Live, because they said the same thing, which is, we love what you're doing for tradespeople with video. We're going to give you LinkedIn Live before anybody can get it. And by the way, I've applied 5 times and I still can't get LinkedIn Live. Just saying. Am I holding a grudge? Yes, LinkedIn, I am holding a grudge. But my point is that my example, and it's always been a kind of a negative example of, can you be a plumber and using this stuff? This guy rocked my world, because if you go on LinkedIn or if you go on YouTube type in plumbing and look at the first 10 examples of videos, count the number that are from Roger Wakefield, the expert plumber. He literally owns the plumbing keyword on YouTube. Just about. I mean, Kohler's up there, a bunch of other big brands are. But then this guy from Texas is up there, and he has created it to the point that he gave me an update because I included him in the book. And he said, by the way, our marketing team now consists of 4 full-time marketers. And this is from 2018 to 2020 when I talked to him last. In 2 years, he took his business that was going down the toilet and turned it into a business that is selling toilets and showers and plumbing and making him an expert, not only in the eyes of the people who know him face to face, but all the people who know him, his face to their feed. And again, just look up plumbing or Roger Wakefield on YouTube, and you're going to find him because he's posted over 500 videos to date. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. If reading this book causes you to do nothing, I have failed. If reading this book, like if reading 10 pages of this book makes you put it down and open up an account you haven't used, like whether it's Facebook or Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever, or or if let me say it this way. If reading 10 pages of this book makes you put it down and open an account you haven't used and start posting to it, whether it be LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever, or check out TikTok, because the story that I tell about Anthony Pilosino, oh my God. Okay, so I got to share this story. And this was all over the marketing press like 3 weeks ago. I mean, maybe 4 weeks ago. That's how fresh this example is. Picture a kid, a senior at Ohio University, who has a job, a part-time job, at a local Sherwin, and that's okay, at a local Sherwin-Williams paint dealership, at a local Sherwin-Williams paint dealership. He literally is the guy who you come in and you want Pilgrim Gray as your color. He's the guy who will mix it for you. Well, this kid gets this job, first job while in college, and he discovers something he's really interested in and passionate about. And passionate about, and that is the creation of color with paint. This kid cracks the code on TikTok because he starts producing these very short form videos that are nothing but opening up a can of white tinted paint, the white tint base, and then adding some coloring into it and doing the mixing process, not in one of those shaker things, but right before your very eyes. And he creates what I think of as visual ASMR, asynchronous meridian response, where everyone knows about ASMR. Crinkle, crinkle, crinkle. And everyone associates it with audio. Well, go to Tonester Paints on TikTok. That's his name, at Tonester, because his name is Anthony. Tonester Paints, all one word. And look at his videos and spend 10 minutes on them. And you will find yourself calming down. And visually, it's tremendously interesting. And get this. He did 6 videos, only 6. And that 6th video got over 1 million likes, and that 6th video got 1 million viewers plus. And now it's still up there, so you can watch that 6th video anytime you want. And I mean, come on, you do anything 6 times and you get 1 million viewers? Are you kidding me? Well, anyway, this kid does these paints, and he stumbles on even a sub-genre of the paint mixing formula thing, where he uses organic materials to color the paints. One of his most engaged with, or one of his most viewed videos, is him taking blueberries, putting them through a brief process to make sure there's not chunks of stuff in it. And he creates this incredibly light blue tone that has some purple in it and all that stuff. And it's gorgeous. And the whole time, as a viewer, you're thinking to yourself, I love that color. I need to paint the bathroom. I love that color. I need to paint the sunroom. Whatever it is. He is selling paint and what paint can do for you every second of every video. But here's the interesting part of this story. Sherwin-Williams, and even better, here's the interesting part of this story. He sees the engagement that he's getting. He gets excited. He goes to the local dealer and says, hey, I'm doing this stuff. Take a look. It's taking off. Local dealer says, oh my gosh, we have to kick this up the chain at Sherwin-Williams. They go to the district guy. They start talking with him. They see the engagement. District guy gets excited. Oh my gosh, we have to put this into a formal presentation and get it to marketing at corporate. He does a professional, or what you can expect of a college student. He does a full marketing presentation on how many views they've gotten, what they've done, and all this stuff. And what happens? He gets fired. He gets fired because corporate thought he was using, corporate equipment after hours, or that he might have done some of the mixing of the paints during regular hours, that he was contacted not by the marketing. He was contacted not by the marketing department. He was contacted by a loss prevention officer for the company that were essentially claiming that he ripped them off. Well, he got fired, but he didn't lose his passion for paint and coloring. And he did what social media is turning out to be a killer app. He was totally transparent to his audience of over 1 million people. He posted a video that says, I got fired. And then he talks about it. He doesn't point fingers too much, but he does make the point that I'm no longer doing this, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I've learned to love it. So keep watching. Anybody know of anybody who might need someone who does what I do, that type of thing. Well, guess what? He is contacted by the marketing departments of every competitor of Sherwin-Williams around the country, and he starts fielding offers ranging from full-time employment to, hey, can we do a marketing campaign based on you and what you're doing, and can we send you paint where instead of the plain cam that you have, can you make sure our logo's in there? So all of a sudden he's got marketing departments bending over backwards. Why? Because every marketing department in the country is trying to crack the code on TikTok and find a way they can leverage the power of the currently hottest social media technology out there. This kid did it. And so what happens? He gets contacted by Don Strube, or Don Strube, I don't know how you pronounce his last name, the president of a small paint company in Florida called Florida Paints. And they say, we'd like to talk to you. They fly him down there. They interview him. Guess where this kid who hasn't graduated yet is starting to work as soon as he graduates. He may even be doing it right now. Florida Paints. And by the way, they're talking about coming out with a line of his paints that use organic colors to create these shades and tints and brand new things. By the way, paint is paint, right? Unless it's made with organic coloring. All of a sudden, that paint has a brand, a true nonfiction brand story to tell about itself. That all the coloring in this paint comes from completely organic sources. What's one of the most powerful words in marketing? Organic. And by the way, what word is almost guaranteed to enable you to price your product higher than anything else? Organic. That is the power of it. And here, this kid made paint sexy. Right. The blend tech stuff. Yeah. 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 Well, and I want to back up just a little bit. And you mentioned something about going viral or things like that. If your goal on social media is to go viral, stop. Don't do it, because virality is an outcome. Virality happens only when you are up there trying stuff over and over. You know, the equivalent of social media going viral is me picking up a baseball bat, stepping up to home plate, and expecting that my first swing is going to put me in on a major league team. Ain't going to happen. And it's not, and I probably, well, I'll just say it. I'm never going to be on a major league baseball team, but I am going to continue to step up on the plate, but I am going to continue to step up to the plate and swing at pitches, because it's the at-bats that make you stronger. And every at-bat you do teaches you something. And that something might be, you know what, this isn't for me. Like blog. I've been in marketing for, since dinosaurs walked the earth, right? I was on the forefront as an early adopter of every social media thing, going all the way back to pre-MySpace. I have accounts on everything, and I have traction on very few of them because I was a lurker. I was doing it so I could understand it, but not do it. And what I learned was, what I always thought was, if I started a blog, the first time I heard the word blog, I would have the equivalent of 15 books worth of material that I could turn into products that I could sell, service lines and stuff like that. Why didn't I do that? Because my job, my title is, at the time it was copywriter. I've been a writer for close to, how many years? Close to 30 years. Why didn't I have a blog? Like you mentioned, Mark Schaefer, he's been blogging for 12 years, and he was late to the game compared to when blogging started. But he's done it for 12 years and is only now taking a hiatus because he's earned it. What if I had blogged all that time? Well, the answer is I didn't blog because it wasn't my style stage. And style stage is a concept that I write about in the book, and I want people to understand, because you have a style and there is a stage that is perfect for that style. So there are plenty of people out there who, I don't want to feature myself. Are you a good photographer? You might want to use this thing called Instagram to make other people go, wow, so-and-so is a great photographer. Like my friend that I wrote about in my first book, Nicole Klein, built her reputation never showing a picture of herself, but the picture of the work she does. Instagram is the perfect style stage for what she does. Blogging for me was a style stage I couldn't keep up with. Yet I was talking to someone who's been a blogger for a long, long time, and he said, I'm so impressed with the fact that you can get a podcast out every single Monday. And I go, the funny thing is, it's not hard for me to, there's work involved, but it's not hard for me to get a podcast out every single Monday. Why is that? It's actually more work than to write a blog post. But why is it for me easier to do something harder? Because it's my perfect style stage. Live streaming. One of the things about this book, I live streamed 301 nights in a row because I wanted to burn the fear of live streaming, because I wanted to burn the fear of live streaming out of me. I wanted to learn how to do it, and I just made that commitment. Guess what? Since the first of this year, I haven't live streamed at all, except for what's happening right now, and I'm hoping the audio is working, by the way. But anyway, live streaming has become a second style stage that I feel comfortable with. And why is that? Because while I may be a writer by title, I'm a performer by nature. And I tell that story in the book, that, and this is a realization that came about because I was doing the deep thinking to write the book. I didn't know that before I started writing the book. And that's one of the things why book writing is so valuable. It forces you to take a seed of an idea and root that seed so it can blossom. And as you write the book, all of a sudden this tree is getting bigger and wider and more powerful and fruitful based on the seed. And in my case, the seed crystal was the story I tell about nonfiction branding and where it came from, which is right at the very beginning of the book. How long do you have available? Because I'm just going to take this and chop it up into things. Because all right, let's get to a wrap up question, and then I'll just lead us on out. Summed up by 4 words: I can do this. And I'm not saying I can do everything that's talked about in the book, but read a section and go, I can do that. I can do this. And that's the way. Okay, so I always think in analogy and metaphor. And so one of the things when it comes to social media is, for me, social media is like going to the gym. I buy the gym membership, I make the commitment, and then I don't go. The hardest thing about going to the gym is going to the gym. So if this book makes you go, no, makes you say to yourself, you know what? I'm going to go to the gym every single day, but I'm going to go to that weight rack and only pick up the 1 pound weight. And I'm going to post something for the first time on LinkedIn. And I'm going to do it once, 1 rep, and I'm done. I'll see you tomorrow. And then you come back the next day, you pick up that 1 pound weight, do it again. That wasn't that hard. Maybe I can do 2 reps. And so you go to LinkedIn and then you go over to Facebook, and maybe you cross post the same material, or maybe you come up with something that's a little bit more Facebook in style based on who you are, what you do, and how you do it. Okay, all of a sudden you're let's say that's a 5 pound weight. Over time, keep adding weight. But the key thing is go to the gym. And by the way, some days it's okay to say you went to the gym by just driving to the parking lot, sitting in the car, and then turning around because I really can't feel anything. I don't have anything I want to share or say. That's okay. You went to the gym. Because if you go to the gym every day and become someone who goes to the gym every day, all of a sudden you're going to say, you know what? Coming to the gym and not having an idea is not good enough. I have to think ahead so I know what I'm going to do before I get to the gym. I'm saying if the takeaway from this book is I can do this, I can do that, I can make it to the gym every day, that's what I hope people do, because the benefits are potentially tremendous. And I say potentially because, again, going back to my comment earlier, virality is an outcome that only comes through a process. And I'll leave you with this quote. It's been in both the books I've written because I love it so much. The beloved coach of the Green Bay Packers back in the glory days, the golden age of Green Bay Packer football. Green Bay Packers football, by the way. It's always plural. Did you know that? Green Bay Packers football is, there is Coach Vince Lombardi said, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And the perfect practice I'm talking about is showing up every day, or whatever I would say every day, while you're sitting there at your desk eating a sandwich, participate on social media. Because, by the way, one of those 1 pound weights is you finding someone that you really love and letting them know you appreciate what they've posted and add to it. So it's not like if, Don, you posted something about what you're learning via you're studying Aikido or Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah. So Don, if you post something about how you're learning a concept from Jiu-Jitsu that you're applying to teaching kids at a university, I might say, wow, Don, I'd never heard that before. Thanks for sharing this. Have you ever read Sun Tzu's Art of War? If so, what is your number one takeaway from that book? Now, what I did in that comment is exercise my social media personal brand, which is I'm engaging with someone I respect. I'm letting them know I appreciate what they're doing. I add to the conversation, and then I include a takeaway at the end that encourages conversation. Two concepts in the book that are related to what I just said: make every comment a conversation. It's not just, wow, Don, thanks for sharing. It's not just, wow, Don, thanks for sharing that. It's doing what a good conversation is, which is, wow, Don, thanks for sharing that. I want you to respond back with an answer to my question. I'm making every comment a conversation. And the other one, and this is a superpower technique, what I just described, there's a mnemonic device that'll help you remember it. Always make sure there's a rat in your comment. A rat, A-R-A-T. A, appreciation. Thanks, Don. R, recognition. At Don Stanley, or whatever his at tag is on that platform, because when you put their at tag in, they're notified of your comment. Addition, I'm adding to that by saying, have you read Sun Tzu's Art of War? And then takeaway, what is your favorite? If so, what is your favorite takeaway from that book? Question mark. What is your favorite takeaway from that book? Question mark. Because here's the thing about you asking someone a question. People love that because it gives them an opportunity to answer and thereby prove their personal brand by demonstrating who they are, what they do, and how they do it. Is it that simple? Yes, it is. Is it that fast that you're going to become some international influencer? No, it's not. But the thing is, what you're doing right now may not be getting you anywhere because you're not even trying to get anywhere. So get off your butt, get it onto social, and start building your personal brand. Well, thank you, Don, for those kind words. Believe me, it wasn't easy to do, but boy, has it been worth it. And again, I'm talking with Don Stanley, who's an instructor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the Life Sciences Communication Department, a frequent guest on the Nonfiction Brand podcast, and I guarantee you're going to hear his voice again because he's become one of my touchstones for, am I right about this? Or do you know anything about this? Or, because it's the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I'm a child when it comes to marketing, and it takes a village to raise this child. So thank you for being part of my village, Don. How can people connect with you on your preferred social channels? Well, thank you so much, Don. As I say, you're a fantastic guest and a great friend. So thank you for being on the podcast. That's it for this week. I'm DP Knudten, and he is. And we'll be coming at you again Oh, and we'll be coming at you again sometime very, very soon. Bye-bye. All right. Cool. We are done. What I'm going to do is I'll probably divide this, because we went like an hour and a half. I'll probably divide this into 2, maybe even 3 episodes. I might leave them long. I don't know. This whole month, I'm going to change the the podcast. Like I've talked to Darren Tessier. He's been asking me questions about the book. And so it's book promotion month or into February. Um, I want, as soon as I get a copy of the book, the finished book, I want to get that to you. But I will show you what it looks like. Yeah, this is a proof. You can see across the front it says not for resale, but yeah, it turned out really well. And let me see if I can find. Oh yeah, no. Let's see. Where are you in here? Don Stanley. 229. It turned out to be 256 pages too. So, it's got that nice heft to it. And there you go. And yeah. And let's stay in touch. I am looking for guests. So these will be, let's say, maybe a couple of months or something. I'll contact you and see if we can get you back on. Do you have anybody that you could introduce me to that you think would be great for this? And again, I'm looking for the quality folks who, even if they're thought leaders, are really people first rather than conventional wisdom slingers. Wow. Right. Wow. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm. Right. Right. Yeah, one of the key things is diversity. So Kevin would be great because unfortunately everybody in my book is Caucasian. And I was painfully aware of that. And the funny thing is I've reached out to some African Americans locally, and it is amazing to me how many people, when offered, here's this big piece of cake, I'll do everything, you just have to talk to me, they don't even respond. And it's like the people who are not picking up the opportunity that is right in front of their face amazes me. So, but anyway, I've got pretty good female in general, but like if I had more minority female, um, anything like that would be really helpful. If there are some professor types that you can link me to, anything like that. And again, all you have to do is make the email introduction, and I'll take it from there because I want to make this super easy for you. Um, oh yeah, yeah. I would love anything like that. Yeah, yeah, great. Because yeah, I keep going back to tap the same people, and they're always great, but I am concerned about diversity. Yeah. Mm, yeah. Oh, cool.